Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me. Let me know if not. Thank you so much for joining Datafold Cloud Demo Day. We're going to give people 1 or 2 more minutes to get started, maybe just 1 minute, and then I will jump right into it. So really glad that you were able to join us. All right, I think I will jump into it so I can get through my intros and context setting and then get you what you're really here for, which is to have a glimpse of Datafold Cloud, learn what we've all been talking about a lot on social media, that we spend every day trying to make the best data diffing experience that the world has ever seen. And by the time we get done with this presentation, I hope that statement means something more to you and you're as excited as I am. So welcome, Datafold Cloud Demo Day. We're going to kick things off. We are here to bring proactive data quality to your DBT project and beyond. Very quick intro of myself. My name is Leo Folsom. I am a solutions engineer at Datafold. I've been here for almost a year, and I joined Datafold because I realized there was absolutely nothing preventing me as a data practitioner from making unexpected data changes that, that I wasn't expecting. When I updated DBT code, when I moved data from one place to another, I realized I was really lacking a lot of that critical visibility. It made it very difficult to collaborate with my team for us all to really know what we were doing and if it was safe or if it was going to take down our entire data infrastructure. So what are we here for today? A few different things. We're going to be focused on Datafold Cloud, but I'm also going to talk through a little bit about our open source project, a refresher on open source data-diff, or an intro if that's new to you as well, as I'm sure it is for some of you. And then we're going to really go in depth into Datafold Cloud's robust data diffing capabilities, how you can put Datafold into your CI, so into GitHub or GitLab, and what that's going to enable you to do is really collaborate with your teammates most effectively to store the results of data diffs, to get clarity into every single PR and the code changes you're about to make and the impact they will have on your data when you merge them. You want that information before you hit merge, not after, not when alarm bells go off, when observability tools start twitching, and so on. We'll also touch on our column level lineage tool, which you can use to get better clarity into what the dependencies are within your DBT project, all over your data warehouse, and even external BI apps like HighTouch, Looker, Mode, Tableau, and so on. Column level lineage is going to be critical because if you look at only table level dependencies, you might think something has a dependency downstream when it really doesn't, when you can edit a column and not even think about what's downstream because you know there's nothing. So it's really about getting finer grained visibility into your data environment. And I will also touch on our REST API, which has powerful capabilities outside of any graphical user interface. So you can hook it up anywhere into your data infrastructure and run data diffs in a variety of contexts, including critically between databases. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is diffing in the PR. That's between, let's say, your production, your development schema. But you might also want to validate, did the data arrive from your Postgres application database, the software engineering database, into your cloud data warehouse without any kind of damage or corruption. And finally, we will do some Q&A, and we'll keep this really open-ended. If you have questions, drop them in the chat, and definitely want to follow up with you all later if there's more you want to discuss about your particular data environment and what you're trying to accomplish and what's exciting to all this about you. I also am so delighted to introduce my colleague Sung, who is a solutions engineer at Datafold as well. So he is my compatriot in the solutions engineering realm. And he will be in the chat. I think he's also going to hop in and say hello if he hasn't already, just to introduce you, and then you'll put a face to a chat.
Yeah, just to verbally talk here, so you know I'm a real person. I'm Sung, folks. Just joined Datafold about like a month ago or so. I've been at DBT Labs for the past 2 years and really enjoyed my time here. And I really see this Datafold and data diffing just really evolving DBT story here. And I just want to live in a world where it's just like absurdly easy for you folks to do this so that your life doesn't turn into just fire drills every day as a normal, that it's a lot about fire prevention. And so I think you're going to see that with what Leo's going to show. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sung. And yes, we will see him in the chat, and I'm sure he'll join live for more of these and probably lead the next one if we're lucky. So I think from there, we are going to jump right into it. So I'm going to quickly unshare my screen, and then I will reshare, and we will arrive in another realm. And that realm will be my VS Code window. And if you recall from the table of contents, so I think, yep, looks like you can see my window. You will recall from the table of contents, we're actually going to start with open source data-diff. Now, if you don't use VS Code, please stay with me. A lot of this will look familiar. If you want to dive into VS Code in the future, just reach out. I'm more than happy to set you up. So some of this might be a little bit more relevant to those of you who are comfortable in VS Code. But for the rest of you, the concepts will apply. And so let's dive into it. So what we're looking at is a dim-orgs model in a DBT project. Make it a little bit, actually, this is probably fine the way it is. So there's a bunch of CTEs up here, a bunch of logic. What we're going to do, and we'll revisit this throughout this presentation as we kind of move from open source into Datafold Cloud, is edit the dim-orgs model and understand the impact of these code changes before we merge the code. And where we're actually starting is long before we even open a PR. I am just a simple developer, and I am thinking I want to edit this model, and specifically, I want to add 1 to the price. So this is a bit of a contrived example, but you can imagine that kind of DBT code change. And I want to add this case statement to subplan. So this is a little bit more interesting, and I think even more realistic than this change. We want to categorize the plans as individual if there is 1 user in the plan. Makes some sense, I think. So finally, I've added a limit statement. This is mainly just to show what the results look like when the row count changes, because that is an important aspect of what we're doing here. And you can see I'm already in a Git branch. So the next step I'm going to take is I've made my code changes. I'm going to run these DBT models. I'm going to run dim-orgs and all the downstreams. It's a small project, so it won't take long. So let's go. While we're waiting, I will call out that this is the first cloud demo day, so I really appreciate all of your patience, and I can pretty much guarantee there will be some hiccups as I do some of this live. But not yet, at least in the sense that all of my models passed. So here we are, we can see a lot of tests passing, some models building, completed successfully, green text. What more could a DBT developer want to see upon running a DBT command? Well, I am about to show you. So that is a good first step. It would catch any null values, it would catch any uniqueness issues in primary keys that you've configured in your YAML. You could build all sorts of tests. You could test that the price was between 0 and 100. You could test that the date timestamp was in a reasonable time frame. Any situation you could think of, you could write a test for. But there will be situations that you can't think of, and that's not too far-fetched. You could imagine an extra character being added to a first name. There's no real test for that because first names can be a lot of different characters. They can be all different combinations of characters. I don't really know how you would write that test. So what I'm doing now is I'm executing data-diff dbt. So this is the simplest version of using our open source packages dbt integration. So let me emphasize, all of you can get started with this today. I'm not going to walk through how to get set up. I'm more than happy to do that in person or over Slack. I'm just trying to kind of focus on the experience of once you're set up and hopefully get you interested in trying out open source data-diff and Datafold Cloud. So what's the result here? We can see a data diff between dimorgs and dimorgs in my development environment. So what this is showing us is, well, the difference between the data. Any rows that were removed, any rows that were updated, and a mere 8 rows that were completely unchanged. And then we can see down here, all of the rows that have updated values. So subprice was updated, subplan was updated. We also see data diffs for downstream models. Updated rows and unchanged rows for this financial model. So before you make these updates to dimorgs, you might consider what is going to be the impact on these financial models that perhaps your CEO will look at. Sales sync, this one is a little more concerning. You can see 4 rows were removed and no rows were added. So we might want to dig into what happened there. Is that okay? And we'll look in more detail as we get to the next step here. So that's the basics of, the way I would put it is, I can't think of why you would develop in a DBT project without having this level of visibility. It immediately gets you, with just one command, so much more information than a simple DBT run, and you don't have to write a line of SQL. Not that we don't all love writing SQL. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a bit and move from here, and we'll get to some of the questions I raised and haven't answered yet. I'm going to move from here into our VS Code extension. So this is going to start to get us to be specific value level insight into what these changes are. So if I click on the VS Code extension, what I see pop up is a list of our models. And what I can do is I can click run. And by the way, you don't have to use the command line tool to do this. You can skip straight to the VS Code extension. So what this is doing is it's running a data diff of dimorgs. And I have 2 ways of looking at the results, and that corresponds with these 2 little buttons. The first way is the summary, and that is pretty similar to the information you see down here in the command line. Rows added, rows removed, and then the columns with differing values, subplan and subprice. So pretty similar, but nice convenient tab. You could maybe take a screenshot of that. This is where things get interesting. If I click on the value level difference, and I will call out, now we're getting into the Datafold Cloud territory. So this is available for everyone for 30 days to get a feel for it, decide if this level of insight is what you're looking for. What we see here is all the removed rows and all their values. And I'm actually going to unclick this because what I want to highlight is the changed rows. So we can see here what values changed from null to individual, from team to individual. You can see that each of these rows that change to individual is associated with a row that has a num user of 1. So I'm going to pause and just focus on this view, because this, for me, when I realized this was possible, was an aha moment. It made me think, I don't want to develop data without having this information at my fingertips. So you have your primary key over here, and then all the rows that have the same values, or all the columns that have the same values, that will match and they won't be highlighted. Rows with differing values, you will see exactly how they changed. And then any rows that were added or removed, they would be called out similarly. So I'm going to just jump back to just see if there's anything going on in the chat. If there's anything in particular I need to call out, I think Sung is all over the chat. And it looks like there's some interesting discussion about multi-project. So yeah, let's just keep going. I'll check the chat once in a while. Full disclosure, I'm only on one monitor right now, so I'll do my best to keep track of it. And Sung, by the way, feel free to just jump in into the camera if you need to interrupt me if you want to cover something. Okay, so here we are
All
in
good. I
VS.
have the chat covered just to be extra clear. You can just focus on your demo, dude.
Perfect. I will not open the chat, and you can just pop right in if you want to add something. Thank you, sir. All right, great. So back to the demo, back to flow state. So to review what we've covered, we've got our overview tab that is available to everyone, all VS Code users. We've got our nice little GUI where you can open the results, you can run any model. I won't cover it today, but you can actually turn on watch mode so that these models diff every time you run them. And so you actually have continuous diffing as you develop. So we are very jazzed about that. I hope you are too. I'm not going to demo that just because it gets because I have specific things I want to show you. So just moving on. The next thing I want to call out is actually jumping back to the command line. This is going to be another way of viewing diff results. Let's see, data-diff, dbt, cloud. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things here. One is I've added the cloud flag. So this, of course, will be available to cloud users. And then I've also added the select flag, which is available to all open source data-diff users. And that just allows me to select any model or any collection of models and diff them without necessarily having run them previously. So by default, data-diff dbt will diff whatever you built in your last dbt command. But you're not limited to that. This will just automatically compare your dev to your prod data. Okay, and so you can see here, and what's really cool about this, in my opinion, is that this is fully open source. But of course, we have to add a paid hook. We have to keep the lights on. And so that's where cloud users can enter their API key and gain access to these, a much richer UX. And so what I'm going to do is click on this and open it. The summary still is printed out into the CLI when you execute a -- cloud command, but the diff results are then opened in the cloud. And so it looks like I need to unshare and reshare to move over to the cloud. And is that the right window? Yes, it is. Okay, so bearing with me, that if you had been in the VS Code and just clicked that link, you would be popped right into Datafold Cloud. And this is where we're going to, I'm just going to walk through a few of the views that you can check out when you're looking at a diff, and I'll talk about why you might want to be doing this in Datafold Cloud. So the information here in the overview is pretty much the same as what you see in VS Code or command line, with the exception of this primary keys tab. So this is going to call out not only any primary keys that exist in one table but not the other, but if there were any null primary keys, any duplicate primary keys, that would be immediately flagged. Down here, you can see those same columns with differences, 67 differences here and 33 here. And I promise I didn't intentionally make the percent match. And then the values tab that we saw in VS Code, we see it here in Datafold Cloud. There's a lot more you can do with this. You can filter on values to inspect, certain columns or certain rows. I'm gonna open this up so you can see all the columns next to each other. So it's just much more interactive this way. And yeah, you can, I think the key point here is that this is stored in the cloud. So like the VS Code extension results are really designed for an individual user way earlier in the workflow. This might be at the point where you're thinking, okay, I want to see the cloud diff because I might be getting closer to the point where I'm opening a PR. I'm going to start to engage my teammates. Maybe I want to share these results with my teammates before I open a PR. Maybe I want to actually clone the diff and change one of the attributes. So you can see here, if I click back, sorry, I'm not sure how I manage that. Normally, you click clone the diff, you get to here, and you have the opportunity to either select a different table from your warehouse, or you can actually select a query. So if you wanted to run a query that selected a certain section of rows, or even just like drop a query that you were iterating on in your VS Code or in the DBT Cloud IDE straight into the Datafold UI, you can basically integrate this into your development process and then run a diff between two tables, between a table and a query, between two queries. So that is essentially where you can jump from your VS Code development process into Datafold Cloud and start to persist this information, start to make it shareable with your teammates, make it so that you can look back at yesterday's diff when you're iterating on the same table today. And yeah, so that is the bridge from your VS Code diffing to Datafold Cloud. It's that -- cloud flag. So let me jump back to the table of contents. And I think the next thing we are going to dive into is, okay, so sneak preview. What I want to dive into next is diffing with our REST API. But stay on the line because we definitely have to connect this to the PR. I just want to call out some things that you can do with our REST API. Okay, so I'm going to unshare, and now I'm going to jump back into a new window, which is a terminal. So this will be a little bit texty, so bear with me here. But it's a pretty important note that as you're thinking about how to integrate data diffing into your workflow, I just want you to be aware of. So essentially, everything that you just saw in the UI can be triggered programmatically. So this is just a really basic script. Looks like a lot at first, but I'll walk you through the parts of it starting right here. Really, all you need to look at is the database schema and table compared to the other database schema and table, and then the PK columns. So this is like your very bare bones data diff. So if for whatever reason you need to create a data diff in Airflow, in Python, in any other environment, I'm going to copy this ID and I'm just going to pop it right into the UI again. So now I've reopened Datafold Cloud, and trust me that I copied that ID that just popped out, and you can see it right here. So we see a lot of teams, if they're not using DBT, or if they want to just run an ad hoc diff, validate any two tables in their data environment, they can still trigger that programmatically and see the full value level comparison. Okay, there's one more point I want to make, and this is a little bit of a sneak preview because this is a super exciting feature, and I'll talk a little bit more about the use case after I run a quick demo of it. And that is cross database diffing. So this has been, we've seen a lot of interest in this, and we've put a lot of resources into building this out. And what our cross-database diffing capability will allow you to do is run a diff between two different databases, as the name suggests. And why would you want to do that? I would make this a little more interactive, but I will instead be Socratic with myself. So the idea here is that you might be engaged in a migration from, let's say, a legacy Oracle system to Snowflake, or you might be just wanting to validate that, let's say, Fivetran or some other system that you use to run ETL is working, is doing exactly what it should. And so I'm going to kick off this diff. Again, this is using our REST API. And the reason that makes the most sense in this context is because most likely you would want to kick this off programmatically, part of an Airflow DAG, that sort of thing. And so I just want to jump into the diff results and give you a sense for what this will look like. All right. So that diff ID that I just revealed was 1688. That was created just now. And if we look at the diff results, we can actually see here, this is a Snowflake database. This is a Postgres database. And we've actually diffed 1.2 million rows. So a 1.2 million row table in Snowflake versus Postgres. We've identified two exclusive primary keys. And we've identified 4 conflicting values. So you can see here in Postgres, these 4 values are some kind of hash, and in Postgres, sorry, I said the wrong database. In Snowflake, it's some kind of hash. In Postgres, it's null. So this is kind of beyond the daily DBT development use case that I started talking through. So I just wanted to put that in your mind as you're thinking about what you can do with Datafold Cloud. It really does go beyond DBT diffing, but that is our bread and butter. That's what we've been doing for a couple of years. And we're really excited to get you all thinking about diffing in DBT from this perspective. So let me now jump into, for me, what I actually talk through every day with customers or prospects who are people who are interested in Datafold Cloud. They have a DBT project. They are constantly opening PRs, want to get to work again, make sure that they are not about to merge code that's going to break stuff. So I think the best way to go about this is actually, I'm just going to open that same window we were just in and go to a PR. So to set the scene, what we're going to talk about is how Datafold can give you diff results in your workflow as you're opening PRs, collaborating with your team. The idea here is that everyone should have diff results as they're editing code, as we saw in VS Code, but also as they're reviewing their teammates' code. Those diff results are important assets that you'll want to share. You'll want to persist and attach to the data diff results. And I'll just jump right to that because you've already seen the code I'm editing. We can revisit that if needed. But this is what you'll see if you open a PR and you have Datafold integrated into CI. So just to kind of walk through this, you've got your base branch and your PR or MR branch. You can see here the row count difference. So again, very similar to the overview information we saw in VS Code in the Datafold app, but right now it's right here in your pull request. Any primary key differences? So you have 11 exclusive primary keys, data that exists in the main branch, but not in the feature branch. Columns with differing values, just like we talked about. So this particular PR It's a little different from the one I was editing because I didn't open this today. If I have time, I will open one live. And then if you are looking for more information, if you are saying to yourself, okay, I see some changes, I'm not really sure if I'm comfortable with that, and I want to merge this, there's some significant updates here, then you can click on View Diff Details, hop into the Datafold app, and we're looking at pretty much the same stuff we saw earlier, but this is now in the context of your CI workflow. So here's your primary key, here's your column A versus, or table A versus table B, and there you have it. So I want to touch on a few more aspects of how this is really impactful in a CI workflow. So jumping back to the code that we did look at, these changes are a little different from the ones I was mocking up. You can see I've updated an upstream ref from signed in to org created. I've coalesced price to 0, and I've included that same case statement. There's a sales sync is updated as well. We'll get into that in a minute. So I've made that code change. I've tried to describe it, and I've asked my teammate to review it. So they look at this and they say, well, could be okay. I see that the 2 columns that were updated are the 2 that were edited in the code. So that's fine. But we also diff the downstream tables. And so here's that sales sync table. Here's monthly financials. And here's yearly financials. So you can see a perfect match, or I'm sorry, a perfect match of the primary keys and the column structure, but one updated value in the row count, and I knew to open that because I saw a little flag. A less perfect match where you have actually a row difference, a primary key difference, and again, revenue and subscriber count have been impacted. And then the most interesting one to me is this downstream sales sync where you go from 4 to 0. So a table having 0 rows, especially one that was not even edited in that pull request, is highly suspicious to me. And so what this information right in front of you in the pull request will enable you to do is go back to the code, say what's actually going on here. And what's going on here is that the sales sync model in the main version is selecting only rows where subplan is null. And if you think back to the data-diff results that we've been looking at now a few times, a lot of these null values became individual. So suddenly, our subplan is null where clause is making the table shrink to almost nothing. And so as a subsequent commit, what we'll update is we'll say where subplan is null or subplan is individual. Now, that's a bit of a judgment call. Often analytics engineering involves judgment calls. And in this case, we're going to talk to the sales team. We're going to say, hey, sales team, how do you feel about your sales sync table having 0 rows of data in it? Would that cause a problem for your sales syncs? And they would say, yes, it would. Please include those individuals. We might be able to upsell them. And so once you've merged that commit or pushed that commit, data-diff will kick off again. It will diff the now 2 tables that were modified in the pull request. And you can see the sales sync now, a modified model, it now contains 3 rows. We haven't wiped out the entire model, and we are still diffing those downstreams. Okay, so I want to touch on 2 more things, I believe. Checking my table of contents again. Yes, I want to touch on just one feature in case there's a question in your mind or in the chat, which is what if you have thousands and thousands of DBT models and you don't want to diff all the downstreams. So the long and the short of it is this does come up with our customers. DBT projects vary greatly in size and structure. And so we have made Datafold highly configurable. We cannot read the mind of our customers or the YAML goblins that may influence their project, but we can ask them to flag important models, critical models, models that are, if they break, they will break downstreams, they will break monthly board presentations, where you really want to be absolutely sure that those are going to be valid. And so you can see here, data diffs of tables modified in this pull request, 1, and this is the same code change that we just walked through. Data diffs of downstream tables. So this is appearing because we've flagged it as important, and I'll show you how we did that in just a moment. But just trust me that that's been flagged. And then skipped data diffs of downstream tables. So these diffs have been skipped, and that is because they have not been flagged in the YAML as diff when downstream. And so, of course, as you can see here, you can run them ad hoc. You can actually add the Datafold diff all downstream label, and then it'll automatically diff the downstreams. So you can see, did I add the label? Let's see. So this PR is about a month old, so bear with me, but I think that there's no reason that shouldn't kick off. Yep, so you can see here, that is now kicking off all the downstreams, and now we are going to see 4 diffs complete instead of just the 2. So we do have a number of configs along these lines. I just walked through slimdiff. If we open this field, we can see primary key tagging. That's often a question that comes up. Oh, do I have to go through my whole project and tag all the primary keys? You do not. We can use primary key inference from uniqueness tests. And that includes composite keys. Something we're pretty excited about, that this was just kind of a thorn in our side for a while. If you rename a column, is Datafold going to know? Well, the answer now is yes. You can actually specify that in your commit message with this remap commit. And that doesn't have to be the entire message, but it could be. And then Datafold will know that plan is subplan, so I shouldn't say 1 column added, 1 column removed. I should say, there are differences or there are not differences between this remapped column. Let's see, anything else I want to touch on? For huge tables, we do support sampling and filtering, and that is really more just to speed up your process, and it'll give you the option of not diffing a billion row table, but completely, but still getting insight into it. That being said, there's no explicit cap on the number of rows that can be diffed. It's just a question of time, compute, cost, and a balance between getting enough information and moving on with your work. You can there's a lot of other configs along these lines. You can exclude models that are, that don't need to be diffed for whatever reason. If your database supports time travel, you can execute a diff between 2 points in time. So talking pretty quickly, just because there's a lot I want to get through, but looking at the time, I'm going to jump into just a quick view into our lineage tool. Great, so I'm sure the chat is hopping. I'm excited to read later what has been being discussed. But what we're looking at right now is column level lineage. So you might be thinking to yourself, this looks a lot like table level lineage. And you would be right, but when you drop down to the column level, you can see here which columns flow into which downstream tables. So for me, where this is very valuable is when I want to think about updating, let's say, num users. I know, based on looking at this, that num users is not used downstream. I might have a new teammate who looks at my entire DBT DAG of thousands of models or even hundreds, and they're lost, right? But you want them to be able to contribute today. And so with this kind of visibility, they would be able to say, what is this sub created? Oh my gosh, it's used in 3 columns in this downstream table. So that is, and that could be a new teammate. It could be a teammate who's been around for a while but is looking at a new part of the project. Another thing that's handy about this is you can focus the lineage graph on any model. So we don't display the entire lineage graph by default. It would be too much. But using some of the tools that I'm showing you, you can select a node. So right now we're focused on monthly financials. You can look at the upstreams, the downstreams. You can change the depth. See if we can get one more. Nope, that's the whole DAG for this one. But you can change the depth to kind of an arbitrary amount depending on what you're looking for. Let's expand this. So you can see here, signed in, activity goes nowhere. I'm sure it's an important field, but it's not used by any downstream tables. So you can kind of edit this freely without thinking about any possible impact on other tables. If I look at event timestamp and switch to downstream, let's see here, where's that? Oh, I think I switched to the wrong thing. First, I need to focus on signed in. And then I'm going to show all the downstreams that I can show. So many. And if I click on event timestamp, you can see event timestamp is a very important column. It impacts all of these other columns. It's somehow used. So in this case, it appears that this created at in dimorgs is perhaps used to filter on the org IDs that are displayed and so on. Now you can also see here a downstream high touch model. So I announced this at the very beginning of the call where your BI apps are going to display in column level lineage. So I think the biggest and last point I want to make about this column level lineage tool is that it's actually built using our query parser. So we parse the queries of your data warehouse, and that includes but is not limited to your DBT project. So because of this approach, you can open any node, look at the SQL that was used to build the actual table. You can see when the table was built. If you're ever feeling like DBT is abstracting a lot, which is one of the great powers of DBT, don't get me wrong, and I'm a big fan of DBT, if that wasn't obvious. This will show you the other side, which is also valuable. It'll show you exactly what happened in the database, which can be clarifying, and it can provide some balance to your perspective on what is going on in your data warehouse. The other way of thinking about this is because we simply parse the query logs to build this lineage, we will pick up tables that were built ad hoc. Maybe someone snuck into your data warehouse and created a table that depends on a DBT model. That would appear. So this is a powerful governance tool, which simply is not going to be included in a DBT DAG. You could think of it like the DBT DAG and DBT framework in general is going to build what should exist, but this is going to show you what does exist. So that includes any upstream or kind of floating orphan tables, any downstream tables outside of your DBT project, and then of course you can see here these high touch syncs, any Looker or Tableau assets, any mode dashboards would also display as downstreams within column level lineage. And yeah, so basically I see this as, once you're editing code, that's when you're going to benefit from Datafold and CI. I would say even before you start editing is where I think that this sweet spot is. Or if you're onboarding new teammates and you want them to just understand like a certain section of your DAG, if you're cleaning up your warehouse, if you're trying to implement new rules, really just gaining visibility into what's going on in your data warehouse as you iterate on your data environment is where this comes into play. So I am going to stop sharing, take a breath, and if there are no questions that we definitely should address live, and I haven't heard from Sung, so I'm hearing from Sung.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, chat. You guys are a lot more engaged than I thought in the chat, and so I've been pretty heads down. But for those of you that want to post questions and want a more live verbal answer from us versus written, feel free to post now, and we'll take it from there.
And I'm just going to scroll through the chat just for my own interest.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm curious for the crowd, and you can post in chat like what resonated with you folks the most in this. Was it the CLI? Was it seeing the Cloud Flag? Was it seeing the values diff in VS Code? Was it seeing the pull request workflow? I'm curious. Oh, Leo, can you show the QR code so that people can
Oh yeah,
schedule follow up with us?
I'll reshare. Yeah, perfect. So as you're thinking, I don't leave us hanging. Definitely want to hear your answers to Sung's question. But we can also start to do a little wrap up. Okay, so I will post the QR code in one moment, but I am also going to just touch on some of our really bleeding edge features. I did mention them in the trial, but just to get more in depth, our Looker and Tableau integrations are just rolling out. And so if you use Looker, if you use Tableau, and this is at all of interest, we would really love to get some feedback for you on these brand new features. And we just know it's going to be hugely impactful for teams who are looking for that kind of visibility, data governance, and impact analysis as they open PRs. And then finally, cross-database diffing, which again, I kind of, fumbled through my first live demo of that, but I'm just so excited about that capability. And I mean fumbled in the most positive way, by the way. Really happy that you got to see that live. And so again, that would be if you are replicating data on a daily basis, whether that's Fivetran, Meltano, your ETL script, whatever it may be, and you want to be running diffs continuously to ensure that the replication was successful. Or if you're conducting a large-scale lift and shift migration from legacy to cloud, from one cloud provider to the other, and so on. Okay, and then I've held back on this QR code for long enough. This will send you to a Calendly link. And if you book time, you will find, once again, myself and Sung on your screen, and we can take it from there. We can have an open-ended discussion. We can just talk about open source. We can talk about cloud. This is what we live and breathe every day. It's just really exciting stuff to be a part of. And so, yeah, we want to address your questions that really matter the most to you in that context. And it looks like we have a little bit of feedback. So Adam's really excited about CI/CD and the CLI tool. And yeah, as I hope I made clear, you can use both. Early in your development process, working in the CLI, get the diff results in GitHub and GitLab. So totally agree there. How would you suggest DBT engineers, James, start to roll this out? Strategy to go from walk to run and confidently integrate data files into pipelines. Sung, do you want to comment on that a bit?
Yeah. I wrote it down just for persistence, but overall, start with data-diff CLI. Just it's free, easy to use. You get that quick taste, that dopamine hit right away, and then when you realize you want something to persist in your pull request workflow, see that column level lineage, have that like big surface area of automatic context, like schedule time with us, and we want to get you effective as soon as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would just call out also that if you are a dbt Cloud user and you use the IDE exclusively, there are a couple of paths to consider. One is if you do want to get access to those command line tools, I speak for Sung, we're both more than happy to help you get set up in that environment. The other thing is we can just pop you right into a free trial of Datafold Cloud because dbt Cloud and Datafold Cloud integrate, just like that. Pretty straightforward to get up and running. And so, yeah, I think it really does depend on your exact setup, the tools you're currently using and you're comfortable with, and that's why we encourage you just to find time and reach out individually. But
Yeah.
overall, yes, starting
Yeah.
with development, CLI, and
Yeah.
James, sorry, I didn't mean to make fun of you.
Yeah.
I
Real
thought you
quick,
did that on purpose.
Leo, can you share the QR code with our Calendly link?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I meant I yeah, I will just yeah, give me just one or 2 minutes and I'll get out of
All
presenter
good.
mode. Yeah.
While Leo's figuring that out, I guess question for the chat. Does this feel like a need to have or a nice to have? And feel free to be honest. We want to know if we're actually solving a real problem for you or if we're just, selling you fluff. And then Kyle, to answer that question really quick, um, there shouldn't be much rework. All you're really doing is, and you can even see it in one of our guides. I'll link it in a little bit, but essentially you just have to add a task within your GitHub action just to send your DBT results to Datafold so it knows what to compare against. And so not much rework at all. And we have a full step-by-step guide in this link. Cool. And thank you, Adam, for the vote of confidence that it is a need to have. That's really great to hear.
Yeah, I'll share. When I started data diffing, it was actually, well, let me rephrase that. I was trying to data diff before I joined Datafold because I frankly realized that I was not able to be absolutely confident when I asked a teammate that it was time for a code review and I felt really good about the code. I was doing some complex refactoring. I did my best to, do row counts and try to compare all the values. And it was something I could do, once, but it took a lot of work. And I realized I needed to have that be happening automatically. Why wouldn't I? Why not have that information? And what I've come to realize is that we are also used to looking at a git diff. That's where the name data diff comes from. And that's where, there tends to be that light bulb where they say, oh, right, I can do a git diff. Why not do a data diff? Indeed, why not? And what you're doing with a git diff or a code diff is you are asking yourself or asking your teammate to do a lot of mental somersaults to figure out what the actual impact will be on the data. And why would we work harder than we need to? Why would we make ourselves more susceptible to very understandable human error? It's just not necessary in a technological age. And so that's just one way to think about it. I would never suggest not running a code diff or a git diff. I would never suggest not running DBT tests that assert certain things must be true, but a data diff will give you much, much more than that. So for me, it's almost like it's a need to have in the sense that if I don't have it, my work isn't going to be as high quality and it's going to take a lot longer to complete. So I'm just not being as valuable a data practitioner as I could be given the tools that are available.
Nice. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate your shout out for loving the VS Code extension. And then, yeah, totally understand you needing some time to sort out budget and stuff before you really dive deep into what Datafold onboarding looks like. But feel free to schedule time ahead of time. We're open to that conversation. Um, yeah, but even just, I guess I'll end with this before passing on Leo for closing remarks is, in my own story with this, so I started off my career in accounting, and surprise, it turns out that I hated accounting in the end. But part of it I realized is because the tools that we use were just so um, arcane in a sense. Like when I had a data-diff, because I was literally using SQL to make debits equal credits for like hundreds of millions of rows. And I mean that very literally. And when there was a diff, you know what I had to do? I had to do like full outer joins manually, export to Excel, color code things, share it with a client, and then repeat that process again and again and again, just to do something that I know that could have been done in like, 5 minutes. And so maybe it's that I didn't hate accounting. It's just I just thought, oh, I have to live in this archaic world forever. And so, yeah.
What resonates with me about that story and is that, and I used to work in the healthcare analytics, so I would have experiences with actuaries, which still give me nightmares. And what you were doing was what you had to do to get the numbers exactly right. So I somewhat ironically, even though it was this like archaic software, a lot of manual work, you were proving out the amount of work that would need to be done to avoid the errors that data diffing would catch. And if you had data diffing, if you had been using these, modern tools in that workflow, maybe you'd still be in accounting, and that would be very sad for me. So I'm glad things worked out the way they did.
Cool. Leo, I think you can close us out now. Yeah.
All right. Should we sing the traditional Datafold closeout song?
Nah, that's for
That
another time.
All right, we'll
Yeah.
save that then. Okay, all right. Thank you all so much for joining. Really glad you got something out of this. Please do reach out, even if it's just a chat. We love to hear your stories, and we're here to help you in whatever way works for you. Kind of meet you where you are. So yeah, I think we'll close things out. See you hopefully on Calendly, on the DBT Slack, and in the data world. And thank you again.
All right. Appreciate you. Peace out, y'all. Bye.